the odd squeaks and belches and strained, out-of-tune sounds that they produced. His solution is to write for the instruments of the modern orchestra in very bizarre ways, to push them to the extreme height and depth of their ranges, to put them in an uncomfortable position which will result in that strained, weird quality he's looking for.
Putting a melody into an unusual range on an instrument, even if the player is playing in that range well, gives an exotic quality to it that the composer just wouldn't have gotten if, for instance, Stravinsky had written the solo for the English horn.
Really, the bassoon solo is more typical to what the English horn would play, that lyrical, slow sound. And I wait until he has played a phrase, and then I interrupt, rudely interrupt this beautiful sound. I want, when I play, to grab the ears of the listener and hold on so that they can't think about anything else, that they're just drawn in to this phrase that I'm playing that's part of the whole texture of what's happening.
Stravinsky introduces one by one the primary soloists, chosen because they are more unusual members of the orchestra. The purpose of the music was to set out primitive tendrils that drew you back through time.
Stravinsky basically wrote two types of solos for the E-flat clarinet. Later on in the piece, you'll get to hear me essentially sound like some sort of howling, screeching crazy man. But earlier on, he uses the clarinet kind of, I think, to symbolize the voice of what might be the shaman. So this is one of our shaman solos.
It's not the first clarinet that interests him, but more the squeaky high E-flat clarinet, and of course the low grumbly bass clarinet.
And everything's going along okay, and all of a sudden the bass clarinet comes in just like, you know, everything's going on, and boom, it just sort of falls in. And it doesn't just fall in, but it's just like, you know, like a meathead.
He makes it clear from the beginning of the piece that these are the featured instruments of the orchestra. And introducing them one by one, they then hang on and contribute to a kind of wild rainforest of noise that is the opening of this piece.
Bum, bum, be-dum, be-dum. Stravinsky wanted that to sound like asparagus shoots growing up out of the ground.
Stravinsky's not just a musical anthropologist recording the squeaky sounds of village music. His purpose is to lead us into the psychological world behind those sounds and reveal to us the compelling power of eroticism and death that's behind such a ritual. He gives us a warning he's about to start this by introducing this ostinato. Stops and starts as if saying, "You a faint heart, this is your last chance to leave."
The whole introduction, all these interjecting things that really feel like they don't make any sense, but they evoke this sort of feeling of restlessness. And then the dun, 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 dun. I mean, it just scared people.
Here sat the young Stravinsky, Now, of course he was nervous because he knew that avant-garde pieces are risky in Paris. After all, decades before, Wagner's opera Tannhäuser had been booed off the stage at the opera. And the audience in a theater like this can be vociferous in its comments. I myself have had the experience of having someone in the audience yell, "Quelle soirée!" What an evening, after I had played a clangorous Copland piece. But the danger was the exciting part of it. Besides, he had had great success here in the past. So what could he do as he listened to that Paris audience making a kind of roar, a kind of class warfare? It was too much. He panicked. He knew he had to intervene. He got up and went backstage.
Stravinsky took the orchestra, which has a history of being associated with high society and high culture, and brought it to this carnal, bestial, earthly level.
It's probably terrifying on a certain level, just trying to figure out, oh my gosh, you know, how much more violent can this thing get?
It was people weren't ready for it. They just weren't ready to experience this, you know, this raw energy.
Now, by the time Stravinsky reached this spot in the wings, things were in a state of complete chaos. But the performance was continuing. What Stravinsky didn't know is that Diaghilev had instructed the conductor, Pierre Monteux, to keep going no matter what would happen. So Diaghilev may have expected there'd be some kind of ruckus at the performance. But back here, the situation was that the audience was making so much noise that the dancers could not hear the music. They couldn't stay in sync. So just imagine, right on this spot, Nijinsky climbs up this chair. He leans out so far, Stravinsky has to grab him by his coattails to keep him from falling over. And amidst the huge racket, he's yelling, 18, 19, 20, 21. These melodies bob to the surface, disappear, and come back again. So the layering gets richer and more complex. But everything is locked into that ecstatic groove. Like when you listen through the layers of production in a big dance tune in a dance club, ultimately you're saying, yes, rhythm, 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 surrender, surrender, surrender to that rhythm. And that is the point of this music, which accumulates to a huge burst of energy before launching us with no preparation at all into the next section. At this point, everyone collapses from sheer exhaustion, and they regroup in a much more solemn, ritual-like dance, the so-called spring rounds.
In many pieces by Stravinsky, he wrote passages in octaves with E-flat clarinet and bass clarinet 2 octaves apart.
Now I beat you. Can we just do it one more time?
Stravinsky was very much looking for something new within the sounds of the existing orchestra.
Sure. Great. Let's keep this slower tempo. Okay.
He's taking randomly 2 instruments that most people would never even write for together, let alone in a 2-octave split, in this very strange, eerie kind of sound, and it has such a powerful effect.
In the Rite of Spring, even the slow sections like spring rounds have a powerful rhythmic feel. It's got the downest, funkiest ostinato rhythmic basis of anything we've heard thus far.